Good morning, TVA board members, and thank you, Chairman Rich and Mr. Johnson, for having the time. My name is Eric Sneed. Proud to be a floating homeowner, member of the Tennessee Valley Floating Homeowners Association, as well as a founding member of Fontana Families for Floating Houses. My wife and I own a home on Fontana Lake. Beautiful time of year down there, and certainly enjoying it. We're here today just to continue supporting all of the floating homeowners that are out there on the TVA reservoirs and all the different types, forms that there are. Our homes are non-navigable floating houses, the ones that were pre-78. And so we'll continue to advocate for those folks out there who have worked hard for compliance and continue to do the right things for the lakes, the marinas, and of course for TVA. Just wanted to remind the board that all of us as floating homeowners, we all lease our spaces. Our spaces on these lakes are actually leased from our various home marinas. Mine happens to be the Alarka Dock on Fontana. These are all legitimate businesses that are operating under either TVA guidance or under the guidance of the U.S. Forest Service, as in the case of ours. Providing a lot of positive impact, obviously, economically for these lakes. And of course, they ultimately support recreation. That's what most of us are out there for. We're there to enjoy those lakes and spend time with our families. Over this past summer, we've had the opportunity on our homes to share the experience with dozens of folks who ordinarily would not have probably enjoyed the lake. We love to have events out there. We bring our kids out, our family, our friends. And we've had the opportunity this past season to help out folks during some pretty good storms down there. We keep our spot clean, we keep the lake around us clean, and we help stranded boaters. And so you think about the impact of these houses. We're truly unique ambassadors on these lakes. We continue to request that the board continue the positive dialogue with the TVFHA and with all of the floating homeowners on the rules and on the fee development. We've been very pleased so far with the experience that we've had. We've continued to have good meetings with the folks and really have been respectful and appreciate the respect that we've been given. We entreat that the TVA board continue to work with all of our regional, state, and national officials to find a better way to regulate these homes. Recognize the actions of our regional governments to support these communities and advance reasonable regulations. I'm a member of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, and so even the EBCI has come out with a public policy stating they want to see floating houses remain on these lakes. You find that across almost every community in North Carolina and in Tennessee. So there's strong support out there amongst the people and amongst these communities to keep the homes. The final thing I would ask for is that the TVA continue the effort of these public meetings and make sure that they're widely publicized. Probably the only criticism that I have of TVA today and the effort of these meetings is that a lot of the communication efforts, I think, could have been better. They should be clearly notified on the website so that everyone has the opportunity to come and enjoy these meetings and spend time with TVA. Thank you again for your time. We appreciate you.
Good morning. Chairman Rich, members of the board, President Johnson. Good morning. My name is Mike Wilkes. I'm president of the Tennessee Valley Floating Home Alliance. On behalf of the TVFHA, I would like to thank the board for their attention and consideration in the May board meeting. It was obvious that the floating home issue was a much debated item both in the meeting and in your working sessions. Since the May meeting, your instructions to the TVA staff to seek comments from stakeholders regarding the regulations and fees has opened greater dialogue. I do want to commend James Adams and Woody Farrell for listening and engaging in many conversations relating to the proposed rules, and we look forward to more of these sessions. We've broached the subjects of reasonable fees, sustainable safety requirements regarding electricity, and the role in which the TVFHA and the TVA can partner in stewardship in the region. We've proposed 3 different rate options which would, in our estimation, compensate TVA for its expenses. Please keep in mind that the TVA only charges a single fee for Section 26A permits, including private docks. There's no annual fee nor inspection after these docks have been installed, unlike what is proposed for floating homes. With respect to safety, the TVA is proposing that all floating homes with electricity be equipped with ground fault circuit protection. While this is a prudent step in preventing electrical shock drownings, there are over 30,000 other obstructions which have a greater propensity for this hazard. I've enclosed an electrical shock drowning incident list for your review. This notes a number of quote-unquote private docks which have caused death or near-death incidents. We ask that when the rulemaking process is complete, that there be no discrimination in this area with respect to floating homes and private docks. Lastly, the TVFHA was formed in March of 2016 in response to the TVA's final environmental impact study. And some of these assumptions and data set forth in it, which we believe to be inaccurate or at best incomplete. We have noted, or you've noted, that we as a group are professional and respectful in our presentation. We have endeavored to present to you a more balanced and complete and accurate record of information for your decision-making process. We are a group of dedicated to the proper and sustainable regulation and reasonable registration, all devoted towards stewardship and providing access to the public. This organization will continue to grow and be a voice for the floating home, marina, and houseboat owners adversely impacted by the floating home policy. The TVA has an opportunity to demonstrate to all stakeholders, the public, that with proper regulation and a strong advocate group and collaboration, floating homes can be a valuable part of a long-term recreational plan. One can look at Seattle, Portland, and Vancouver, British Columbia as examples how floating homes can coexist and thrive in partnership with their regulators. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And I will remind us.
Hello, I'm Laura Sneed, and I'm with Fontana Families and the TVFHA. I want to start off with, I'm originally a girl from Minnesota that had no history, distrust, or disdain of the TVA. That is until May 5th, 2016, when you, the board, made the wrong decision by voting to sunset floating homes. Before that, I had always had a healthy respect for the U.S. government and believed that it would do the right thing in the best interest of the people. I was so wrong, and for once I understood what it felt like to know that something I loved could be taken away without real cause. This decision has created pain and anxiety for so many people, people that are United States citizens who are from different states, with varying income levels, races, ages, and sexual preferences. As you know, Fontana Lake lies on the land that the TVA forcibly removed from people of Western North Carolina, and they were only paid pennies on the dollar. The wounds of that land grab are still very raw, and I never really understood it until, or at least the depth of the emotion, until May 5th. Across the lake from our floating home is the land my stepchildren would have inherited had it not been for your organization. At least with our floating home, they could look at their land as they grew old, but now that's not even an option. We have to leave because we're privately using a public resource, despite the fact that we're paying mooring fees and are in a marina limit. It's ironic, considering you're using a public resource for private use and profit our water from the mountains of Western North Carolina. Now, unlike the past, you have the opportunity and the power to change course. Sometimes we do the wrong things for what we believe are the right reasons. In the scheme of the TVA's ability to produce power, these houses mean nothing. But to us in Western North Carolina, they mean everything. Extend an olive branch, restore my faith in the U.S. government. Please add this to your agenda and remove the sunset. Just offer a 26A permit, do initial inspections, follow-up inspections, and then work with marinas, or even fly a small video drone over biannually to see if everyone's still in compliance. This solution is much more economical, and there's no need for a sunset, no outrageous fees, and you're not granting in perpetuity, which seemed to be the sticking point. It can be as simple as that if you let it be. Your claim has been you're sunsetting homes to serve the people. Well, the people of the United States actually want them to stay. U.S. Congressman Mark Meadows and U.S. Senator Richard Burr want them to stay. 7 U.S. congressmen from Tennessee want them to stay. The Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians want them to stay. The local and state governments of North Carolina and Tennessee want them to stay. All of those officials are voted in by the people and serve the people. I ask you to discuss this among yourselves and then follow the will of the people. Thank you for letting us speak today. I really appreciate it.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the TVA Board. My name is Mike Miller. My wife, Lynn, and I live in Knoxville. We are floating homeowners at Norris Dam Marina. We built our home in 2012 after several phone conversations with a member of TVA management. I was the last speaker at the Paris Landing meeting in May. I wished you good afternoon because as I approached the microphone, it went past noon. That was a week I will never forget because the following Monday I had a routine scheduled colonoscopy that wound up with the sun setting on me that day with stage 4 cancer. My whole life changed. It was not a death sentence, but it has me made some priorities in my life. My wife and I have been discussing updating our estate plan and our wills. I met with my attorney in July. We updated our assets since our last update 9 years ago. As we reviewed our assets, the floating home was one of those acquired assets. My attorney asked me the value of the floating home. Our invested value is $200,000, but I was at a loss to answer him. This is one man's testimony to the insecure and unmanageable position that TVA Sunset has put me in. I know in May the extension from 20 to 30 years was in some part an olive branch extended to the floating home owners. This was gracious on the part of the board, but still does not answer the valuation question. 30 years, a time that will probably exceed the life expectancy of most in attendance, board and floating homeowners alike. Basically, the proverbial can has been kicked down the road. It will be someone else's problem. In the past 3 months, I have spent considerable time thinking about the working parts of the sunset provision. If I may, let me share some of those with us. Point 1, does the TVA have a staffing contingent to perform the necessary inspection provisions of the sunset? Next, the sunset has been in place 90 days plus. How many inspections have been done? With the thought that the 3 to 4 best months of weather are already in our rearview mirror. There are 900 floating homes on Norris Lake. How often will inspections be done? There is talk of an annual fee for the floating homes. What would this fee be for? And will we see accountability for the expenditures of these fees? Using up my time here. Let me just go ahead and conclude here. I had a couple of other points, and I left a copy with the gentleman here. The sunset can cause many unintended consequences. Please send this back to the staff and look at the outcomes and reconsider the sunset decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Debbie Samples, excuse me, and my husband and I own 2 marinas on Norris Lake, Whitman Hollow Marina and Indian River Marina. Pardon me, I have allergies and they're really bad this morning. I'm also a board member of the Tennessee Floating Home Alliance. We understand that TVA has a business to run, and business decisions have to be made for the greater good. We do understand that. These business decisions sometimes require compromise on our part that affect us in very personal ways. Take Maddie Randolph, for instance, in Campbell County. But this also means that TVA should take great care to make decisions that are no more invasive to our way of life than is absolutely necessary to achieve the greater good. And the greater good here is twofold. First, you have to make sure that the floating homes don't continue on or to proliferate indefinitely, because that could create a potential risk to navigation and a potential encroachment on others' enjoyment of the reservoirs. Second, floating homes which already exist must be maintained in such a way to meet proper standards. But let's be honest here. It's hard to imagine that out of 1,800 floating homes, 98% of which are moored in marinas that are licensed by you, presents private use of public lands. Let's be honest again. TVA's policy decision to accept alternative B2 offered absolutely no legitimate rationale as to why such an overly invasive solution must be implemented in order to achieve greater good. B2 causes very real financial harm to floating homeowners, marina owners, local school systems, and banks who have made loans collateralized by floating homes' values. Just as important, alternative B2 is over-invasive because alternative B1 achieves the greater good. To that end, I want to give you one last piece of honesty. TVA did not enforce its regulation prohibiting new floating homes for so long that the standard of non-enforcement became the operative regulation, the regulation in reality, rather than the prohibition. As such, people, and I'm talking about smart people like bankers, like lawyers, like business people, began to rely on that reality, reasonably rely on it. After all, that was the reality for decades. I urge you to revisit your May 5th policy decision. Do the right thing. Make a decision that achieves the greater good in the least invasive way possible. Thank you very much.
Slinker.
Good morning, TVA board members and Mr. Johnson, President Johnson. My name's Gary Farwick. My wife and I are owners of Flat Hollow Marina and Resort on Norris Lake. We're a full-service marina with approximately 250 slips and mooring customers. 60 of those are floating houses, and I might add that 20 of those floating houses are rentals which provide additional public access to the lake. I attended and spoke at the Paris Landing meeting. I supported the B2 alternative with no sunset, and I still do. After our 3-minute presentations were made there were a few points that I was surprised to hear from Mr. Johnson's presentation, and I would like to address some of them now. First, none of our floating houses or houseboats, for that matter, are used for habitation. They are used only to provide access to the lake. Floating homes have basically the same utilization as a factory houseboat, with the exception that they do not cruise the lake. Second, as far as floating houses are concerned, there is not an issue of private use of public waterways. They actually provide public access to the lake rather than deny or restrict it. Whether access to the lake is obtained by a floating house, houseboat, ski boat, or fishing boat, they are all privately owned and they all provide access to the lake. Some of the floating houses and houseboats are rented, which even provides more public access. The third point is the floating houses are not granted access in perpetuity. All floating houses, at least 98% of them, are located in the marina harbor, renting space with an annual lease with our marinas. They are assigned a spot by the marina owner. If they or a factory houseboat owner does not meet the provision of the lease is terminated and they are evicted. If they decide to move to another marina, they are easily pushed like a barge, or if they decide to leave the lake, they are dismantled just as TVA is recommending that they do in 30 years, with a 30-year sunset. Finally, as you've heard today, there are here with this many speakers and many more to come, that the policy choice for the board will have a severe economic impact on the state and local economies, the state and local tax collections, and individual floating homeowners and marinas. In fact, those marinas that have 60% or so floating houses on Norris will likely face bankruptcy when the sunset begins. We would hope that a solution could be found that would not involve a sunset, and I thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
President Johnson, Chairman Rich, members of the board, good morning. My name is Van Hillary, representing Floating Home Association, or Alliance, I should say. We met about 3 months ago, and we had this similar dialogue. Our goal was to have as many 3-minute, respectful, informative little speeches and presentations that we could, and based on the amount of notes y'all took in the last meeting, I believe we were presenting some things that maybe you had not been privy to before, and I hope to continue that here, and I hope we have continued that here today. Maybe because of that dialogue, I don't know, maybe you were going to do it anyway, you sort of directed or indicated to your staff you wanted them to work with us in a meaningful way in the ensuing 3 months, and they have done so, and I thank them and you for that. Woody and James have been mentioned earlier, and I would commend them again for their efforts. It's been a positive dialogue backwards and forth, and I believe because of that, we've been making very real progress toward resolution on all the issues such as any threat to navigation, any environmental issues from wastewater disposal or improper disposal thereof, on real safety issues with regard to electrical wiring and such. I think we're moving toward resolution in a good way there. I feel good about it. The fee structure, which you brought up, Mr. McWhorter, we're a little further apart on that, but if you all have as a goal, as a board, to impose that fee structure in such a way that is the least invasive necessary to meet the funding needs of any kind of, regulatory scheme that y'all come up with to force us into compliance or make sure we have compliance with that. If that's your goal, I think we're going to move toward resolution on that pretty quickly too. Where we've made no progress, of course, is the sunset, and you've heard a lot about that here. We appreciated y'all moving it from 20 to 30, but one of the things I want to drive home in the very short time I have here is that if any of you think that that has really fully mitigated the very real financial harm to these folks, local school systems, local governments, marina owners, floating homeowners, it hasn't come close. Very real, very current financial harms being done. I was told of a story just before I came up here about a very real-time situation where one of the floating homes was put up for sale in one of the marinas, and they got less than half of what they asked for, and we're pretty sure they got less than half than what they bought it for. It's a very real situation. It's not rich people. There's some wealthy people that have floating homes. By and large, they're just regular folks, retired couples, that live in the dream. They bought their home on the lake, literally on the lake, and they put a healthy chunk of their savings into it. And now they can't get that money out if they've got to go fund assisted living or whatever. All I would ask you to do is take a very real look at that policy you put in and see does that really solve the problem in the least invasive way? There are other available means to do that, it seems to me. And whether it's renewable permits with ongoing compliance inspections, whatever it is. But I would just ask that you've compromised a little bit on all these other things. Could you come off the absolutist stand on this just a little bit to get to a much less invasive solution that reaches the greater good? Thank you.